Foddian Rage game. Is a genre that has become very popular amongst indie games, and refers to a game that is intentionally frustrating due to its weird, unconventional controls or mechanics, often with worlds made up of pre-existing assets where one little mistake has the potential to make you lose a bunch of progress. We're in a time where it feels like almost every few months a new popular Foddian Rage game gets made. Streamers flock to it for a few weeks, the next one gets made, and the cycle repeats. Popular examples of this are Chained Together, Only Up, and The Game of Sisyphus, to name a few. It feels like the genre has only really taken off recently, but as most of you know, it's been around since 2017, from a game that a lot of people are going to be familiar with. As a lot of you already know, the genre came to be all thanks to a man named Bennett Foddy. That's where the Foddian comes from. Bennett Foddy is an Australian game developer who is trained in moral philosophy and developed games like Quap, Gerp, and Clop, all of which became pretty popular during the early 2010s of YouTube, but most people know him for his most infamous creation, Getting Over It with Bennett Foddy. You play as Diogenes, the famous Greek philosopher, whose one goal is to climb this huge mountain made up of random assets with nothing but a hammer, all while Bennett Foddy talks about philosophy or taunts your last mistake. It's one of those games where you could look at it and be like, psh, yeah, I could do this easily, and then you actually play it and probably never finish it, unlike me who has over 200 wins. This game would lay the foundation for so many Rage games made afterwards, but there's one game that people forget about. At the beginning of Getting Over It, Bennett Foddy mentions something that a lot of people tend to dismiss.
This game is a homage to a free game that came out in 2002, titled Sexy Hiking.
Sexy Hiking. Now, this game is old, 2002 to be exact. That is only 1 year after Runescape was released. I wasn't even born yet. But somewhere in Czech, a man known online as Jazzuo would go on to make this game. Now, Jazzuo has made a lot of games. In fact, you can still play them now on this archive website. There's some great games here, like Bet on Samurai, John Delivery, or Star Wars 7. This one's actually pretty sick. Jazzuo wasn't really trying to make his games great, if you couldn't tell. He pretty much just made games for fun and never really spent too much time on them. Most games use random assets or just poorly made sprites, and usually can be beaten extremely quickly or just have a very repetitive gameplay loop, which is why there are so many of them. It's hard to know when exactly it was made, but from what I can tell, Sexy Hiking was made as the final part in the Sexy series, which consists of Sexy Hand and Sexy Hand 2. You play as the Sexy Hiker, whose only goal is to climb. Similar to Getting Over It, you do this by using your hammer, which is controlled by your mouse, to hook, swing, and push yourself around the environment. Unlike Getting Over It, you can actually walk around using the arrow keys, and you can even manually save and restore the game at any time. Compared to Getting Over It, the physics are interesting, to say the least, and it's pretty easy to break the game by clipping through the environment. But even with all this jank, it isn't too unbearable to control. It can just be a bit unpredictable sometimes. Instead of being one huge mountain, Sexy Hiking is split up into 4 levels. To clear a level, you need to touch this red ball creature, who actually appears in a few other Jazzuo games, where you are then rewarded with this.
Well done!
The other levels get more challenging and add a few extra game mechanics, like moving blocks and ropes you can hang onto. But as is the nature with Jazzuo games, there really isn't a whole lot to cover here. But it is cool to see where Getting Over It originated. Aside from the obvious features like its controls and the world being made up of pre-existing assets, there are other parallels you can see, like the tree at the beginning, this final section where you have to hook the hammer over this beam above you, the bad ending, and even having a reward at the end of the game.
Come on, now!
But the real thing that makes this game so special is that if it didn't exist, we wouldn't have gotten Getting Over It. And without Getting Over It, the Foddian Rage game wouldn't really be a thing. You could argue that it would have come from somewhere else, but I doubt it would have the same charm, if that's what you want to call it. So just remember that anytime you watch some streamer screaming at a game that looks like an above average asset flip with bizarre controls or mechanics, that game probably wouldn't exist if it weren't for some random Czech game developer who happened to make this little guy right here.